Hello and welcome everyone to the 32nd official episode of Eunuch Corner Club Live. Today we have a very special guest, one that most of you probably already know, someone who does excellent work analyzing the society that we live in, especially from the side of statistics and psychoanalysis. Her name is Aydin Paladin, and she has a long channel that we are going to get into today, as well as just get to know some about her and who she is. So without further ado, let's say hello to Aydin Paladin. Hello, how are you today, my friend?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
I'm good.
For those just tuning in, or those that missed the earlier stream, there was a host of problems with the stream today. First up, Aiden was going to be late, and when we tried to do a community stream, YouTube, for some reason, instantly killed the stream, and we had to build it all again on the fly from scratch, so that was certainly fun. And then, during the community stream, we had an audio issue, and then Bill lost internet, so it's just been a comedy of errors today. But thankfully,
that's why I don't stream.
Stable now.
I don't stream. It's always a problem.
Streaming is definitely, streaming's definitely, it is not for the faint of heart or the short of patience, I'll put it that way. So, that being said, let's make sure that everything is live over on DLive and Trovo and Entropy. Now, for those of you that are just joining us, we will be putting the Entropy link in chat. Kizza, White Healing, those of you that are here, please do the usual link shilling in chat for me, especially about Entropy while I get things set up and make sure that we're all good right now. Trovo and DLive both seem to be working. We are good to go right now over on each platform, so that's good. I am getting some stream hiccup from one of those, so if there is a bit of audio issue right now, that should pass momentarily once the streams get synced up again. All right, so that being said, we look good. We're good on Entropy. We're good on DLive. We're good on Trovo. And soon, whenever I have the option to, we will also be streaming to Odyssey. Odyssey library is good. So first question, Aiden, do you have a library Odyssey? Did you clone your channel over there?
No, I haven't done that yet. I need to, though, because, I mean, screw YouTube.
Well, it's very easy. It's very easy.
Really?
All you have to do is go make an account and set this channel and give it a link, and in 1 to 2 weeks they have your entire catalog with all of your titles, all of your video descriptions. They put it all over there in order chronologically, and it's all over there for you. You don't have to do anything other than just set an account and tell it go. That's all you got to do.
That's awesome. Let me write that down then.
Yes.
Because the less work I have to do, the far better. Just also because I have so many videos. I mean, I don't have some people, they've got catalogs, they've got 1,000 videos or something. It's not that bad, but mine are all like an hour long, so that would take forever to re-upload. And
on the internet, each one of your videos would take me like 6 hours to upload. Yeah.
It takes me 6 hours, I think, and on UK internet, which is all right, but it'd take forever, I think, to have to re-upload. But that's awesome. So I'll definitely look into moving over to Odyssey. I've been meaning to. The only reason Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say Odyssey's great because they are no censorship, and it's going to offer live streaming. The interface is smooth. The video plays smooth, and I'm already getting good interaction over there. And I'm a small channel, and I still get people liking and commenting on my videos over there. So I know that you would have success over there. A lot of us dissidents, we're already used to using stuff besides YouTube anyway. So it's good to go ahead and start branching out now while we can before the anti-whites zap us all.
My only fear about it is, and it's not just Odyssey, it's everything. It's why I didn't make a Parler. It's why I don't make accounts on a lot of websites, is because I'm like, oh, this is going to get nuked from orbit by someone or another. Like, I think Minds, if I'm correct, Minds has all of their own stuff proprietary. So they own their servers.
I don't know about Minds as much, but I do know that Gab owns all their stuff and controls everything in-house.
Yeah, I can remember it was Gab.
It's probably Andrew Torba and Gab if you're talking about people that own and control everything from the top down with their own servers, their own hardware, and everything. Now, Minds could be that way too. I just don't know much about Minds or who's behind it, so I can't say one way or the other about that.
They're cool people and behind Minds, but I don't think they do have proprietary stuff. I know, Torba and Gab are the ones that are. So if I was going to sign up for anything, this is the only fear, and I guess it's easier with Odyssey, right? If I don't have to do anything and it will go ahead and do it, that sounds ideal. Because the other fear really is that if you spend a bunch of time like re-uploading or getting invested in building a following on one of these platforms, and then some leftoid gets booty blasted about something and decides that it's a den full of alt-right Yahtzees that need to take it down, and then poof, it's gone the next day, and it doesn't appear like the U.S. legal system is going to protect the right to free speech in any sort of meaningful way. So that's just
we all get beat with the Yahtzee stick now. It's not just people like me anymore. It's everybody.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've certainly gotten beat with that for years, and that's just from being a libertarian. But you know,
I mean, when I say
libertarians
like me,
are the next,
I don't mean because I'm some kind of nat sock or whatever. What I mean is I care about white people specifically, and I think Western civilization is a series of countries for white people by white people, and it's okay to talk about that because all other peoples in the world are allowed to and even directly encouraged, so we should be too. So that's been my stance for a long time. And of course, you know, I've been called the Yahtzee up and down and all the other anti-white slurs that they tell you everything under the sun. That's just how they do, you know.
But that's how it is now. It's all just throw the insult, hope it sticks, and throw the slanderous insult, hope it sticks, and then remove the person. But that's all over the place.
So, without further ado, we've got our full audience back. We've got about all 50 now. So let's go ahead and get into the meat and the potatoes of you being here in your interview today. Whenever I have someone on that I really like, and for those of you that don't know, I like Aiden. She's been on in an episode of Discordant Dragons. She'll be on again this coming Monday, and hopefully for future episodes. I've talked to her on other community streams. I think she's nice. We have good rapport together. But I have not given her a featured interview on my channel for all of my followers and loyal Yizraelites, and today I wanted to do that. So, Aiden, take 5 or 10 minutes or as much time as you want, and if you would please, tell me why you started your channel, how you've grown since you've been running your channel, and the overall reason of why you do what you do and what you want people to get from it. Would you mind doing that with us today?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if it's going to take that long, but I'll try to fill some space.
That's fine.
It's pretty simple. Basically, what happened was I was in doctoral school, and I was not having a good time mental health-wise. I was really stressed out, and I needed to take a sabbatical. I just had to, or I was going to die, essentially. And I was taking a semester off, and there was the problem is that I went from having so much work to having no work, that then having no work drove me insane. And it was during that period of time, this was when did Trump get elected? Late 2016? Yeah, he entered January 1st of 2017. So this would have been fall semester 2016. And I wasn't taking any classes at the time. I wasn't teaching. I was doing some TAing and stuff, but I wasn't basically doing nothing. And I started to get really political because the 2016 presidential election was happening. And I didn't know, I mean, I'd always been a libertarian, but I didn't know a whole lot about politics other than government fuck off. That was my entire position. And I was just uneducated, but I wanted to learn. I was really eager to learn. I was in a doctoral program, so I knew a lot about other stuff, but in many ways I was very isolated from politics. But my dad had always encouraged me to get involved in politics more. My dad, when I was a teenager, he was like, "Oh, you should go be a politician because you're so good at talking." And I'm like, "I don't think you know who I am." Because I hated public speaking, but I guess I've gotten over it.
Your dad's not based. He was encouraging a woman to get into politics.
Well, yeah, I think he wanted me to be a lawyer more than anything. I think he thought I should, because he's like, "Oh, you're good at debating. You should go to law school." And that is how I started. My freshman semester, my first year freshman.
And a lot of people who do law do go into politics. It's true.
Yeah, but my first semester freshman year, I was going towards a law degree, and I hated it. I did not like it, but I had to take a public speaking class. And up until that point, the only time I had to ever do any kind of public speaking was in a high school level English class, and I basically just elected to not speak, and it was the only time I'd ever gotten like a D or anything below a C on a assignment ever in school. Because I was just like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm too afraid to speak in public. But freshman first semester, I was required as part of the pre-law program to take a public speaking class. And I was like, I guess I'm going to fail out my first semester because I can't do this. I had a great ex-Jesuit priest who was very stringent as a professor. And he was an ex-Jesuit priest because he met his wife while he was teaching and decided he'd rather marry her than keep being a Jesuit priest. But he was just an older guy, and he was very strict. He would catch you on any ums or uhs and dock you for every time you messed up even a little bit. So it was very scary, and he was very intense. But through that class, I came to be like, this communication thing, because he would talk about theory a little bit, and I became fascinated in it. And so from then, my second semester, I switched my major to communication, particularly organizational communication. And then I spent the next 4 years getting my undergraduate degrees in organizational communications, public relations, and psychology. And then from then, I went to graduate school. I got my master's degree in communication studies with an emphasis on media psychology. And so that brings us back to where I was saying. So it's 2016, late 2016. I've taken a sabbatical from doc school because I'm stressed. I'm super stressed out. And from there, my dad basically said, he's like, well, you're stressed from school, and now you're also depressed because you're not working, because it is depressing to not work, for me at least. Yeah. And so he said, why don't you...
me too.
Right. So he's like, well, I would call my dad up all the time and complain about stuff I was hearing on the news, complain about politics. And this is, again, me. I am nearly politicized at this point. So I'd call him up and we'd talk about stuff. And he said, why don't you stop complaining to me and go complain to the internet? I don't know if that was a good idea or not. It worked out okay.
Well, I think it was, because now we have you, and now we know you, and you've been contributing for a lot of years. So that's good.
Yeah, well, it worked out okay. And I find it to be, it's stressful. It's very stressful in its own ways. But I think it's really helped me grow as a person in a lot of ways as well. And really find a way that I can integrate science and politics and pop culture and current events in a way that I always wanted to do anyway. That, the reason, like, if you look at the old presentations I would put together when I would teach class, in doc school and grad school, like, they were full of memes and jokes, because there's humor orientation processing theory, which posits that people are more prone to assimilate information when it's accompanied with a joke, something that helps them. Humor orientation processing theory, what is it? Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of the title of it right now. But there's a theory that basically posits, it's by Melanie Booth Butterfield is the seminal scholar. It's funny I can remember the scholar. I can't remember the theory now. But
let me interrupt you for just a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
Let me interrupt you just a second. I see a lot of people in various chats asking questions or saying things that you want me to ask Aiden.
Sure.
These will be gone very soon in chat. So I'm putting a link right now to Entropy. Entropy is where you need to put questions or comments directly to myself and Aiden for me to address later. In Entropy, over on the left-hand side, there's the question widget. Those don't go away. They don't get buried in chat, and they will remain, and I always address what's in the Entropy question widget. And especially you, Ruination Media, I've seen you say a couple things already, but it disappears in the chat and I lose it. So over on Entropy, please, it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to send a paid chat to use the question widget. Type in whatever it is you want me to address or ask Aiden, and towards the end of the show, when we're done with the interview, we go through all of those, and we have back and forth time with the community. So I put the link in chat. My moderator, White Healing, he'll be putting these links and others, if you want to financially gift, into the chat soon too. So we'll be handling all that here in about 30 or 40 minutes once we wrap up the official interview and what we have to chat about. So with that being said, Aiden, I would like to showcase two of your recent videos. One I have picked out is one you did called Censorship and Contagion. That's the one I want to talk the most about, because that's the one that directly intersects the most with what I like to talk about and what I'm all about, which is spreading positivity and using memetic language to try to heal the damage that weaponized white guilt and anti-white sentiment in the media and schools have done to us. So we'll start with that one. And then the second one I have picked out for us to talk about today is, I think, your most recent one called Peer Pressure Conformity. That was your last one, right?
Yep.
That one I want to talk a little less about, but still a couple of important things, and then I'll wrap up by asking you a question before we move on to the community stuff. So, without further ado, do you mind if we watch a minute or two of your Censorship and Contagion video that I have prepped?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well we're gonna fire that up right now, and guys that are watching, I don't mean guys, I mean everybody. You people that are watching today. give us a few moments of your time to absorb one of Aiden's videos. It's an excellent video, and again, we're going to watch just a few minutes of this. We're not going to watch the whole hour, obviously, but we're going to start here at the 2-minute mark. And this is what Aiden's content is like, and this is why you follow her. So here we go.
Oh, Mr.
These are just some of the actions of social media companies that we know about. But do social media sites manipulate what people see in less obvious ways? And do the people see on social media actually have the kind of rabbit hole-like effects that we've been told are a potential threat to the well-being of society? Today, let's look at the research on how social media affects our beliefs, our moods, and how social media sites may be influencing not just what information you see, but how you even feel by looking at emotional contagion. So let's begin by looking at whether or not social media is really social and organic, or if it's created and manipulated. But first, and because 2021
my
is
sponsor
off
is
to
here.
a particularly stellar start, you may seek.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to skip it. Don't worry. I knew it was here. Don't worry.
I mean, you still get that deal for Surfshark VPN if you use code Aiden.
Let's switch gears and get into something a little bit less pleasant and a little less fun to watch. And that is the absolute dumpster fire that is social media, which itself may affect what you can and can't watch, or at least have access to, by first discussing whether or not social media censors us at all, and in what ways they may do so.
Now, we're going to pause it there. That was just a couple of minutes of one of her videos. And I wanted you guys to see the quality of editing and how well built her material is. She makes some of the best presented videos I've ever seen on YouTube.
Oh, wow,
And-
thank you. There are
No,
a lot of
I
people
really
who
mean
do
that, Aiden.
stellar
I really do
shit.
mean that.
Thank you.
There are a lot of people out there that make really polished, nice videos, but they don't have the level of intellectual and emotional impact that your videos do. The only other person that I can speak of that is of your caliber on YouTube is probably Black Pigeon Speaks.
Yeah,
he goes by Felix since he got doxxed, but you know, it's
Oh, I didn't even know he got doxxed. Shoot. But I think he and I have a similar background in like advertising and PR and marketing. So I think that's, I could be wrong, but I think that's like where he got a bunch of his skills, because his video editing is really, really slick. But I think he has some,
Oh yeah, he makes great videos too. Yeah, absolutely. Been following him for a while.
Yeah, I think he has some kind of background in doing stuff that involves video editing, and which I do as well. So that's just serendipity.
Yeah.
You get lucky.
No worries. The reason I wanted to feature this video, it's one of your recent ones too. It's like a month or two ago, maybe even more recent than that. But in this video, you talk about emotional contagion, the power of positivity in spreading ideas and motivation. And just like we were talking about with humor earlier, the reason I wanted to talk about this is I often say that me using Jason Kuna's Go Free lexicon, using the promotion of localism, currying what I can through through the regular good old-timey Southern religion, working with people on a local level, I cultivate a positive message about unity and growth in a relatable way. And that makes people more willing to hear what I have to say about necessary racial and ethnic consciousness and fighting back against the damage that weaponized white guilt has done to our people. And by using positivity and relatable topics and things, I feel like I have a curative contagion. I spread a curative memetic idea or memetic language that spreads like a reverse disease. And I just thought maybe we could take a minute to talk about that kind of thing. Does that sound like something that would interest you?
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely. Emotions spread virulently like a virus, in that, you know, if your friend is depressed, well, then maybe you'll feel depressed. This is sort of like no-duh things that we know about society, but it's always worth going in here and looking at it with data. And for example, in this video in particular, what I'm talking about is emotional contagion within the social media context. And there's been a long line of research that's who did the, oh man, I'm like, usually I'm so on point with this, but for whatever reason today, I'm a little bit slow on the uptick. A series of scholars who've done a bunch of research on understanding how social networks work, and specifically how emotions and trends translate via social networks. Let me see if I can find the scholars here while I'm working through this. But the general gist of the their findings have been that if your friend is overweight, you're between 30 and 50% more likely to be overweight as well. I don't know.
Yes, that was in your video. I remember that. Yeah.
Christakis and Fowler. So it took me a second. I had to boot up my brain.
This video, by the way. I listened to it when it was live, when you first put it out, and I listened to the entire thing again today while I was working on stuff. So it's all fresh in my mind. Excellent video.
Oh, thanks. See, for me, it's like 4 videos back, so I have to like reboot that part of my brain.
I feel you. I forget stuff too. It's all good.
It's all there somewhere. Just sometimes it's a little slower. So the Christakis and Fowler data, they did that. The one that they're most famous for that Christakis did his TED talk on is on the spread of obesity. But the same research group also did the spread of emotions via social networks. Now, when they say social network, they're referring to not Facebook and Twitter specifically. They're referring to real world social networks. So again, if your real life friend is obese, and let me see if I can find the exact number here.
I remember the correlation was remarkably high.
Yeah, if your friend, if one of your friends becomes obese, the chance that a close friend of the same sex will become obese is increased by 71%. So
no, that's crazy.
Yeah, and in the general network, if you have one friend who is obese, there's a 45% higher risk of obesity within the network, that specific friend network. So, that's the obesity research, which itself is kind of alarming. But in terms of emotions spread the same way. If your friend is sad, you tend to be sad. And one of the things that you mentioned when you said that you try to spread positivity is that that's actually a totally different thing I didn't talk about in this video. But it's like you want to front load your message with positive stuff, something that everyone can agree with. And whether you know it or not, you're actually using a very classic persuasion tactic. Just because it's a persuasion tactic.
On my channel. I thought doesn't mean it's bad. On my channel how. Yeah, the way that you relate to people, because let's face it, most people aren't like us. They're not jacked in 24/7 to culture war stuff. They haven't been steeped in it for years. Regular folks that have families and have jobs and have kids, the people that we want building a better future, they are not really into all this, and they don't know a lot of the stuff we know. They're not like, they don't see the Matrix, or they're not fully red-pilled or whatever. So to reach people and let them realize, hey, these people are lying to you. There's a strong anti-white message. There's an anti-Christian message in all this. A lot of people are sort of vaguely aware, but the people who are vaguely aware, we need to get motivated and get active. And to reach people around me, I always approach them with relatable, normal things. Like I talk to them about losing jobs, about the job market, about the stupid lockdowns, about the crazy transgender stuff that's being pushed on kids, about the ugly anti-white stuff they see in their kids' school books, that kind of thing. And just getting in the door that way, it's like classic sales tactic too, to get people to talk to you, to listen to you if you want to sell them something.
Foot in the door in the face. Yeah,
right. And doing that, just building that small amount of rapport, it's easier to get people to realize that this stems from our own values being weaponized against us. And I put it into the framework of there being synthetically manufactured white guilt for European people to feel guilty about things that we never did. And that is exploited by companies and anti-white ideologues and people. And that's basically been a core element, if not the core element, for a lot of the problems that we have right now socially. And I find that opening up the door with relatable stuff, and even being funny and self-deprecating, is using sales tactics and normal persuasion tactics to get people to start thinking on things in a constructive, healthy way. And I liked it because this video directly supports with real data what I've been saying on my channel about this for the last year. And I spoke for a while on that. Is there anything you want to say in response to that?
Yeah, there's two things I want to point out. The first one is you bring up the fact that people don't have the time to get into this. And it's actually why I think YouTube was, if it not is anymore, a really great platform and a way for people to convey information. Not just YouTube, but podcasts and all kinds of stuff. That are able to convey information in an audio format and be fun about it, because inherently we are all cognitive misers. Some of us are a little bit more so than others, but cognitive miserliness is a trait that is not related to IQ as far as I have seen in any data. And cognitive miserliness just means that, guess what? The brain takes up a huge amount of energy. Most of us would rather spend our energy playing video games or playing sports or doing something fun rather than getting down and looking at data
most Americans are the I just want to grill types.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's something I try to really hammer home anytime I mention cognitive miserliness, is that it's not a bad thing, and it's it doesn't. It's not a sign of an intelligence. Most people just want to enjoy their lives. It's called the hedonic principle. Of course, we want to have fun. We want to grill. So when you are bringing up topics that, let's be real, are disconcerting, to say the least, if not, deeply upsetting, then and not just that, but things that are complicated to get into. And I think that cognitive modularness, as a general trait that people tend to have, is, and there's also another trait related to that, that's need for cognition. And need for cognition is another trait that people have in greater or lesser degrees that I also can't find any, and by I mean, I don't think there is any consensus in the data that finds any evidence that relates need for cognition to intelligence. And what need for cognition is a desire or need to want to think about things. So some people, they just don't care. They just want to feel things. And a lot of the study of need for cognition has gone into like studying films, what kind of films people like. Some people don't want to watch brainy, long-winded, boring sort of movies. They want to watch something that makes them feel good. And that's need for cognition versus need for emotion. And
that's the whole reason I started the Dragons of Discord thing, is I wanted a relatable, fun, lighthearted way to get the ideas I cared about out to people in something that went dense or emotionally heavy, something that people could just casually turn on, but I could still let them feel the emotional positivity and talk in the way that I want to talk about certain issues. And so far, it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, because people, again, generally speaking, people don't want to be depressed. Now, hang on. There is something called mood management theory that predicts that sometimes people want to be depressed. But generally speaking, we don't want to be. We want to grow. We want to have fun. It doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. It just has to do with human nature. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is social judgment theory. And social judgment theory works a lot on what you were talking about, too, about how you want to bring people in and have an open, sort of like nice environment that everyone can come in and not feel necessarily ostracized or feel like that this is not going to be a judgmental space. And the way social judgment theory works, it's a persuasion theory, and it posits that basically everyone has three latitudes when they hear a message. They have the latitude of acceptance, rejection, and non-committal. And when you're giving a persuasive speech, you want to aim for what you think the audience's latitude of acceptance is at the beginning. So you start with a message that's acceptable by everybody, because it's always going to be in their latitude of acceptance. So like, hey, aren't dogs great? Everyone likes dogs. Yeah. So you start with something that everyone can agree with. Here's the
everybody loves the puppers.
Everyone likes dogs. Some people like cats, but I like cats more than dogs. Sorry, I'm going to get canceled for that one.
I like both. I like both cats and dogs just fine.
I like both as well, but I've always been more of a cat person. But everyone can agree. Pets. How about this? Pets are great. We can all agree. Yeah. We like animals. Animals are nice. And so once I've agreed with a speaker on this first thing, then when they start to move their argument into a place that falls outside of, let's say, my necessarily normative latitude of acceptance, into my latitude of non-committance, or even my latitude of rejection, then because I've acquiesced and agreed with the first thing they said, now there is a normal consistency and reciprocity that takes place. So that's such that to avoid cognitive dissonance, I will be a little bit prone to continue to agree as long as the argument makes sense, as long as the argument is cohesive, to continue to agree. So once if we start out on a positive thing, then we can move.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, just once you start out with a nice positive thing that everyone can agree on, then we're actually psychologically conditioned to not disagree on future stuff.
Yeah, one of the tactics I use when trying to get people to talk reasonably about race and white guilt and that kind of thing is I'll oftentimes, when I have people that are really hung up on that it's evil or wrong to even talk about white people as a group. Good example is when I talked to the Canadian guy, Short Fat Otaku, who I know you know.
Yeah.
And I was on his Dumping with Scrump, and I wanted to talk about white guilt stuff, and he kept getting hung up on the word white, so I just shifted gears and started saying Western. So instead of saying anti-white, I started saying anti-Western, and because to him that was a much easier thing for his mind to not reject, we were able to have a smooth conversation about the things I wanted to talk about. And then he actually engaged in the way that I wanted him to, because I was willing to meet him linguistically and memetically on ground that he was comfortable with. So
Absolutely.
I know exactly what you're talking about there. Now, speaking of word stuff, let me put something up on screen here for you. A book that I discovered is called Go Free by Jason Kuna. And he is a an activist for white well-being. He is about wellness and helping Western civilization better. And he is a content creator that would actually talk to you if you want. He runs a stream. He does in-person activism for good old American patriotism and stuff too. And this book of his, I think that you would really like, and somebody like you could read this easily in an afternoon. It's like a mix of a college textbook and a workbook to teach some basic things about communication. The subtitle of the Go Free book is A Guide to Aligning with the Archetype of Western Kind. It's a good book because it talks about a way and a frame that you can use to make things positively about race without directly punishing or shaming or excluding people who aren't white who also live here. That's why it's called what it is. And one of the things that I like in his book a lot are two terms that he uses called meme pathogen and meme curative. And these are terms that I know that you'll like because they go hand in hand with the things you talked about with the science of that video, the viewers that we just looked at that we've been talking about. He says that a meme pathogen is the memetic transfer of ideas that will spread naturally, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, like a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual disease that is designed to weaken Western kind and destroy the systems that have made our civilization good. And then the opposite of that, which a lot of the book is about how to implement correctly, are the meme curatives, which of course is what he says that we use to restore those. And the meme curative are easy to memorize phrases and things that you can say to neutralize, anesthetize, and heal the damage done by the meme pathogen. And there's a bunch of examples in this book, but one of the ones that I like a lot, that I use for Southern Christians, since that's who I deal with a lot, is when the topic of reparations comes up, and you know how that's been a hot button thing the last few years. When the reparations thing comes up, one of the meme curatives for the meme pathogen of the reparations talk is atonement can't be given for a crime never committed. And in the South here, when I talk to Christians a lot, I use the word sin. So I say atonement can't be given for a sin never committed. Like, the whole damning the son for the sin of the father thing. Yeah. That's an easy way to get Southern Christian folks to talk to you about stuff. And it's a good way to relate to them and show them that weaponized white guilt has been turned against white folks, especially in America because of the race division. And it directly damages us. And you got these anti-white professors, these anti-whites in Hollywood and media and stuff. They are psychologically weaponizing that to get their way politically and financially over us. And that is an easy thing to implement, which is analyzing what meme pathogens are and using meme curative phrases and ideas in your normal life to get people thinking on this stuff in a constructive, healthy way. And they don't have to spend 50 hours listening to Aiden Paladin videos to get it. This is something that regular folks can read and learn and do. And I would love to get your feedback on this book, or even maybe for you to do a video about it or something one day. We can talk about it more offline if you want. But when it comes to the concept,
I'm fascinated by the concept of memes. So
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, that was it. It's just I'm fascinated by the concept of memes. It's something I've been studying for the better part of 10 years. So absolutely, I'll check into it. I've never heard of it though.
It is definitely a fascinating phenomenon, and I think that Dawkins gets the credit for coming up with the term. Is that true?
Yeah,
because I've read that before.
No, I mean he didn't come up with the word meme, but I don't believe. But he did identify it as what we commonly refer to as a meme. I believe that was Dawkins. I could be wrong, but a meme is a unit of cultural information. If that is the most basic definition of what a meme is, a unit of cultural information.
And those packets, of course, can be implemented in a lot of ways. And this book focuses on, specifically through the lens of race, but also just in our civilization, people who want to either weaken or destroy or simply exploit for profit. They have weaponized our own values and the already extant memes like tolerance against us. And this is a really great for teaching anybody. You don't got, like I say playfully, you ain't got to be a rocket surgeon for this.
Yeah.
It's a good book that teaches you good language tools and internal mental tools to be able to identify these meme pathogens and easily have the right things to say to diffuse them and give people the tools they need to, in turn, spread the counter to it. And that's why I like when you talked about emotional contagion, because I view this method as a curative contagion to the disease, to the cancer that's got all the way into Washington now with the long march through the institutions and all that other stuff that started 100 years ago. So with that being said, do you have any comments or questions about what I just presented in this?
Real quick, I agree with you. And I think another book that I would really recommend is The Political Brain by Dr. Drew Weston. And what he talks about is very similar to that, in that he posits, it's a fantastic book. He was actually a scholar who worked in the sort of persuasion department, if you want to call it that, for the 2008 Obama campaign, I believe. And what he really quickly realized is that you cannot convince people with logic and facts without emotion. You need emotion, you need feelings, which all memes do, whether they be funny or what. Yes, this is the book. It's fantastic. Absolutely check out this book if you're interested in political persuasion. But another thing that he found is that you can never, ever, ever convince hyper-partisans. People who are incredibly partisan towards one side of another are already so deep down their rabbit hole, they're not going to listen. But if you do want to try and convince people, the best way you're going to do it is by using emotive language. So yes, using memes, being funny, being entertaining, all of these things are more persuasive than being dry, just generally speaking.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Great book.
So, this book I've got on screen. I put the link in the live chat for people that want to check it out. Anything else you want to say about this before I take it off screen?
Nope. Just check out the book if you're interested. I reference it all the time.
I've heard you talk about it before, but I've got really bad ADHD and I have trouble reading. Like the Go Free book is really easy to read, and it took me like 6 months to fully read it all because I have such trouble reading block text. It's really hard.
Oh, no
for my
problem.
brain to do
I
it.
much prefer when it comes to full on books, like
If I had time, I'd do a full audiobook of Go Free, but
Yes,
I don't have that kind of thing.
audiobooks are easy. Okay, so even for me, I spend literally pretty much all day, every day, when I'm not recording or doing something else, reading studies. And I do that because it's fun for me. But the reason it's kind of fun is because I know the structure of a study. They all follow, the report always follows the exact same structure. So if I'm getting bored reading the literature review, or I already know the literature review because I've read everything about it already, then I can just scroll down and just look at the charts and like, you did a regression, you did an ANOVA or MANOVA or whatever here. Okay, cool. I understand it. And just look at the science. That's very entertaining. With books, I do like the audiobooks a bit better because then I can listen to them while I'm doing other stuff. So there might be an audiobook for Drew Weston's. I've
been listening to Julius Evela's Ride the Tiger. Do you know about Ride the Tiger?
I have heard of it, I think, but I'm not familiar.
That one. I'm about 6 hours into it now. It's dense and kind of weird, and Evela's a weird guy, but it's a fun book. It's a fun book to look at on stuff.
Yeah, I think I've heard the name, but I don't know what it's about.
I don't want to get into it. It's NRX stuff. I don't want to get into it. But on this topic that we're on before we move to your other video, I wanted to talk about negative emotion. Mm-hmm. And negative emotional content is reciprocal, like you talk about in the censorship and contagion video. Mm-hmm. And you brought it up earlier before we even got to this about the overweight obesity thing being socially contagious. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I focus on is what I call white positivity. Because if you are in now this is a leftist term, an anti-white term I don't generally use, but for purpose of this conversation, in the social zeitgeist of talking about this kind of thing, you'll hear the term white identitarian. And in the white identitarian intersection of people that talk about white folks as a group and care, there are many who think that a good focus to take is talking about the Q stuff, pointing out how Israel's behind a lot of this. They talk about, the Bolsheviks were Jews and Jewish billionaires and this and this and that. Or they want to play the talking about Islamists, or they want to talk about how, look at the IQ statistics, look at crime statistics, point the finger at black, that kind of thing. Now, while much of that is based on reality, I don't think that is healthy or a good way for me to spend my time or to devote my platform to, because that is negative emotional content. Because the message in all of that is this group or this type of group is bad, and I want you all to know they are bad, and your life is bad because they are bad. And I feel like even if you are able to convince every single person that listens to you to not like Jews or to not like Israel, or not like blacks or whatever, you're not creating anything positive, and you're not actually changing or making the lives of the white people that you supposedly care about any better. So that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
I eschew that in favor of positivity, building connections, analyzing what's wrong, and telling people constructive ways that they can make their lives around them better and healthier ways of being. That's why I like the phrase white well-being, and that's why I really fell in with Jason and his crew of white well-being activists. So because it has an ethical bent that I like to this whole, white positivity, white identitarian stuff. That's sort of where I fall naturally into that. Will you talk a moment, maybe in relation to what I just said, but specifically about the mimetic spread of negative emotional content as well?
Sure. So any emotion can spread through a network very easily. It can be positive or negative. And I think that one of the things that is so pervasive in terms of white people and their identity or lack thereof, because they're not supposed to have an identity, is that it's pervasively and overwhelmingly negative. That you should be ashamed of being white, that you should apologize for the sins of your ancestors, even if your ancestors weren't responsible for any of these, sins. And yeah, the focusing on the JQ stuff, that I find that to be kind of pointless. Focus on, or just stupid, honestly. But you focus on your own well-being. Focus on the things that you can do.
To be fair, it's not stupid. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we're lied to about, and there's a lot of things that need to be documented and not forgotten. But people's been doing that for decades, and if that line of talking was going to make a big difference, I feel like it would have already. That's why I eschew it in line of positivity.
Well, exactly. It's not going to go anywhere. Even if you did have a point, at some point, history is written. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if how accurate or inaccurate it is. History is written. There's no point arguing in it. I'm unfortunately, that's just the truth of it. And so,
especially with regular folks, like when it comes to regular folks, if you start denigrating, obviously denigrating a religious or racial group, you're automatically going to lose people, and they're going to think you're a bad guy in the anti-white narrative. They're going to think you're a bigot or a Yahtzee or whatever. And I even did a video recently called Unfashionable Fascism. Did you happen to see it?
No.
I specifically talk about why Americans notably are a bad market to try to sell that to. But anyway, that's getting off the point. Go back to what you were saying.
Well, it's just that, I think focusing on positivity is inherently better. First of all, it injects positivity into the system. And when you're injecting a positive emotion into the system, then there's a greater propensity for that positivity to grow. I think everybody should be allowed to, if they wish, to be proud of their race, to be proud of their heritage, to be proud of their ethnicity, to be proud of their sex. It doesn't matter. You should be allowed to be proud of the things that make up who you are. I think I think it's more important that you be proud of what you have done with your life. But there's no other group of people on Earth that we tell cannot be proud of their heritage, except for white men, pretty much, and white women to a lesser degree.
Right, exactly.
So that's just weird. If it's okay for everybody else, and I think it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine to look at your history and feel a sense of pride in it, and look at your ancestors and feel a sense of pride of that. Again, I think you should probably focus on yourself first and foremost, but the reality is that race is an inexorable part of everybody's lives to a degree. It's a part of our cognitive heuristics. Infants can recognize races from the time they're like 6 months old, okay? So pretty quickly, people recognize that there's that races, that people look different. But even if there were no, skin differences or facial differences between people, an infant would still be able to recognize that mommy has blonde hair and daddy has brown hair, and there's some difference between them. We have developed the capacity to make these decisions based on our cognitive heuristics as a necessity to make quick determinations of safety or harm in an evolutionary environment, right? So to know, like, oh, this thing is like something that you're in the grass as a little baby and you see a long stick. Well, you might be afraid of it because it might be a snake. We have evolved to specifically be afraid of things that are different, and we have specifically evolved to go towards the faces of our mothers and fathers to a lesser degree, but mostly towards our mothers. So there's evidence, for example, in some of the research that finds that mixed race children tend to more identify with whatever the race of their mother rather than their father, because they have much more exposure to the mother's face early on, obviously during breastfeeding and early bonding, than they do with their father. So it's why you find a lot of people who are half black, half white, and they tend to identify with whatever the race of their mother is.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up the heuristic recognition, because that's actually what I was going to talk about next after I shared that second video of yours. So I think this is a perfect point to segue. we are going to segue now to your peer pressure and conformity video, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
All right. We're going to watch just a couple minutes of this. This is A Jury of Our Peers, the psychology of conformity, Aiden Paladin. Here we go.
Justice is in many ways the core of all of our social contracts. We not only anticipate, but seemingly require those who have transgressed to be punished for their crimes. It is a central tenet of our social system, and while all people value fairness, we value it to varying degrees, as described by Moral Foundation's theory. But how is justice really enacted in practice, given that it must need to be arbitrated and administered by humans with all of our flaws and biases? The United States legal system and legal systems around the world utilize juries so that representative members of the community can collaboratively come to a decision about the guilt or innocence of a defendant. But just how much free will do juries really have over the fate of said defendant? Are juries comprised of individual dissenters arguing for or against certain points based on the true merits of a case? Or are they generally conformist groups that vote in the way that the majority believes, regardless of any rationale for that belief? There will always be court cases that capture the interest of the general public, as the O.J. Simpson trial did in the 1990s, and by nature of that interest, inherently impose some social pressures on jurors who are forced to come to a verdict. But just how influential are the effects of conformity on a group of jurors who specifically have been selected to be
Okay, and that's where we're going to stop it there. I definitely recommend you guys watch all of that video. Like all of her videos, they're long and deep, so it's like a 45 minute to an hour investment, but absolutely worth your time. Every minute of it is excellent, except for maybe the ads.
Yeah, sorry about the ads. I mean, I don't even notice it because I have YouTube Red, so like,
I'm just busting chops.
Oh no,
hey, we all got to pay the bills.
At least I get them.
We're good.
I have to be fair. At least I get them because
true.
Always.
At least you get them. That's right.
It's very.
And you
scary.
worked hard to get that many subs. You deserve.
Oh no!
Now,
I mean, at least I get ads.
Like
at least I get ads because it's every upload. It's like, gee, I hope it's not yellow after I spent weeks working on this.
I thought you meant sponsors.
Oh no! Oh, the sponsors. Sorry about those. You can skip over them pretty easily. But
I'm just busting chops. It's fine. It's all good.
Sorry, either way.
It's a running gag. It's a running gag with us small time creators. We'll be like, hey, let me tell you about my friend Raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah, well, I can tell you about Raid Shadow Legends, by the way. Use code Aiden.
I'm sure you could. But no, the reason I wanted to segue to that is you started talking about recognition heuristics and things. Mm-hmm. And I like how in that video you speak about how human groups, whether racial, ethnic, religious, or otherwise, you speak about those things as reality, as things that are different and things that impact lives in an unapologetic way. I really like how you are about that. You're not afraid to speak about the truth. And you speak about it with conviction, not because you have an ideological bent, but because you have a scientific bent and you like the truth. That alone, in my opinion, makes you a champion in today's era of, the abject anti-white hatred, the disgusting coddling of non-whites and immigrants, acting like, oh, you can poo-poo Christians all day long, but you're not allowed to talk about Muslims and that kind of thing. I really like that about your channel. And since you brought up the recognition heuristics, when it comes to peer pressure conformity, I think that this is a primary way that the anti-whiteism, the weaponized white guilt stuff, has been. It's very evident because we're told not to be race blind only in certain ways that make us feel like we are evil or we have to help the others onto the white plantation type of stuff. And we're also, from a young age, that same weaponization of in-group, out-group stuff that you brought up with the statistics, it forces us, whether overtly, like some professors say, or passively, like a lot of our media and school books and fake history do, it raises us to have white guilt inherently to make us feel bad for others that aren't part of our civilization. So could you talk a minute about that and tell us your view on that? Maybe give us some scientific underpinning for why that exists in America?
Oh, it's Jonathan Haidt's Moral Foundations theory, right? In that everybody is primed to feel certain types of things all the time. So it's this what you're specifically talking about is the Harm Care Foundation. And the Harm Care Foundation is just desiring to not see other people harmed and to care for other people. This tends to be a trait that we find consistently more frequent in people who lean to the left. People who lean to the right, they still value the Harm Care Foundation, however, less so than left-leaning people. Specifically, left-leaning people just don't care about the foundations of authority and purity. So they have no perception of like something as being disgusting. They don't perceive that kind of thing, and they don't care about what authority figures say. Although I think the instrument needs to be reworked, because I think that they do care, but it's just that the way the instrument is worded needs to be changed. Yeah. I think leftists really care about authority quite a lot. I think they want to be the authority, though. I think that's the issue. However, the point is, though, is that moral foundations are universal. We all do kind of care about not seeing other people harmed, and this is a big part of how stuff gets worded in the media and worded in corporate advertising of, look at this poor child who is starving and crying and suffering. What are you, heartless? You don't care? Of course we care. It hurts to see another human suffer unless there's something kind of wrong with you. You know, I would say, generally speaking, we don't like to see other people suffer. So,
and the reason why I think that it's evident this kind of thing has an anti-white bias is you don't see commercials, you don't hear professors, you don't see movies, and you don't see it in cartoons and syndicated media or comic books showing the downtrodden, broken families of white people.
Oh no.
The destroyed middle class of America, the downtrodden, broken white working class of America. And symptomatically, that's why we got a Donald Trump in the first place, is because nothing else is addressing this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, again, you know, I'm from West Virginia. My grandmom's from, she's from Follinsby, which is outside Weirton. And I bring this up because it's
central West Virginia, isn't it?
It's in the Northern Panhandle. And
Northern Panhandle.
The reason why I bring up the Northern Panhandle is because 70 years ago, it was a booming area of industry with the steel mills. They were incredibly prosperous areas. Today, they're basically just crack dens. There's no industry. There's not barely even jobs at a supermarket. Like, half the people have to go across the river into Pennsylvania because West Virginia's taxes are so high on businesses that they can't even afford to have a grocery store there when there's so few people left, because everyone has left. Because the steel mills have been bought up by foreign companies and are all but shut down. So these are people who are seriously suffering.
And also, we started outsourcing a lot of our metal production to China.
Oh, yeah. That's why these towns are all dead. These people, and I mean, seriously dead. It's some of the most look up, Follinsby, West Virginia, or Weirton, West Virginia, and prepare to see some of the most depressing stuff you've ever seen in your whole life. But the reality is that those people, they were hard workers. They've worked there their whole lives, and they voted Democrat because they were pro-union. And they basically voted themselves out of existence. But no one cares about the opioid epidemic. I mean, some people do, but for the most part, they don't care about the opioid epidemic in places like West Virginia or Kentucky. They don't care about the lack of jobs, about the loss of industry in places like Follinsby, West Virginia. Really, there's no one advocating for these places. Not even people like Joe Manchin, who's the governor. No one is advocating for these small white communities. And by white, I mean they're not just like some homogenous white group. It's people of Italian descent, people of Welsh and Celtic and Irish descent, people from
it's
Polish.
Basically Europeans get the short end of the stick, because there's a notably, you could even call it Europhobic tilt in media and education and everything.
Yeah, no one cares about those people.
Core, that's the core of anti-whiteism. Is before even our parents were born, this had already started, Aiden.
Senator,
and that's why I think that it's important.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said Manchin was the governor. He's not. Isn't he the governor then?
But no, that's why I wanted to get you to talk about this, because you have a very erudite, clinical, analytical way about you, and I feel like it gives a lot of credence to people who sound less scientific, like myself. When we go to talk about the systemic anti-whiteism, we're not just whistling Dixies, they say in the South.
Yeah.
Like, this is notable behavior that has come to us through institutions and education and Hollywood and pretty much all of the big institutions, even the federal government. There is definitely systemic white erasure in media and historic representation on top of the weaponized white guilt stuff. And you've got the data to back it up because I see it in your videos. And I was just hoping that I could get you to talk about it through the lens of anti-whiteism with me. And I'm glad to hear that you agree on this stuff. And thank you for coming on here to talk about it today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me. And thank you for tolerating my latent gayness. But I think, yeah.
It's okay. We're all latent gay sometimes.
It's a problem. It's a problem all across the Rust Belt, right? Where you have these predominantly white communities that are suffering in a way that, in terms of crime, and it's not the same type of crime, but crime and drug abuse and sexual abuse, all kinds of stuff that similarly afflict inner city societies and communities. But nobody talks about what happens in Tennessee and Kentucky and West Virginia and these Rust Belt areas, some parts of Pennsylvania, and so on.
Yep.
No one cares. And why? Because they're predominantly white.
And they don't even talk about the problems of Black and Hispanic communities in these big cities in the correct lens. They blame it on the white man. They blame it on systemic racism and all these other anti-white slurs.
Who's probably struggling just as much. Okay, so I spent half my life in West Virginia living in the Rust Belt. Specifically, I mean, where I lived as a kid, which it doesn't, like, you're not going to dox me off of this, and I've already been doxed, but whatever. I grew up in Fairmont, West Virginia. Fairmont used to have a really large, I forget what Fairmont's specific industry was. It was, I think, coal adjacent. Yeah, I think it was coal adjacent, but it wasn't specifically coal. And at one point in time, Fairmont had something like, I don't know, 60,000, 70,000 residents, and today it has like 15. So the half the town, 15,000, not 15, 15 altogether, 15,000. It is so depressing to drive through Fairmont. Yeah, it is really sad.
It really is.
And after that, I moved to Baltimore City. And guess what? I saw the same stuff, but in a different lens, where you have a city that used to be productive and now isn't. And the racial division in a city like Baltimore is perhaps one of the worst in all of the country. Yeah. The racial division, like, you can drive one block in Baltimore City and go from a super rich, predominantly all white and all Asian neighborhood into a super poor, all Black, all Hispanic neighborhood. And that segregation is a problem, but you don't just, the answer is not to say, well, let's just take Whitey's wealth for us. We need to fix the Black community.
And it's not just taking Whitey's wealth. It's destroying the possibility for the white people that are kids now to even have wealth.
Right.
And like that's the real sinister thing here. And that's why we have the decay we have now, because this isn't new. We're like 3 generations into this now. And that's why things are really starting to collapse socially and racially in America, in my opinion, is because this anti-white crap has basically become, at the federal level, enforced across the board.
Right.
And even when you look at old Beijing Biden's plan, remember his Biden plan from last year?
Oh.
Like, there was a huge section in there specifically devoted to talking about how racism and all these other anti-white words like white supremacy and systemic oppression and all this other stuff is what he has to combat. And he plans to do that by using the America Forward crap and I forget what it's called, but whatever they used in California to basically force quote unquote diversity into every municipality in the state. Biden said that by the end of his first 4 years, he was going to enforce that to all states in the union.
Well, it's ridiculous.
And so it's like this is clearly an assault on all of the things that made the West great. And you can even see the damage in non-white communities. And I know you'll back me up on this because you like statistics.
Yeah.
Even a larger predictor for violent crime than race or sex is fatherlessness.
Yes, I was about to bring it up. Thank you.
Almost 100% of the time, violent organized criminals, drug dealers, and violent rapists and murderers and shit, it's almost 100% of the time they either have no father or a terrible father. And look what's happened. In the last year, destroyed Christianity. They've told women to be men. They've told men to be women. They've told us just to have all the sex you want, do all the drugs you want. They have destroyed the family and crippled men and emasculated what it is to be a father.
Yeah.
And because of that, look what we have. And I think that, obviously, I think that the goal of a lot of these people who pushed that, like the old Marxist march to the institutions and all that stuff, the goal was to destroy Western civilization. But in doing so, they destroyed the capability for anyone in the system to be self-reliant or stoic or have strong family values or good ethics. And of course, we're seeing that affect even non-white communities. So that's just, I wanted to see if you were aware of that, or if you'd back me up on the statistics about the fatherlessness and the destruction of the core family.
Yeah, that's actually my major issue. And I think that, this is a multiracial issue. And the plight of Black people in this country, in the United States, is in large part due to the fact that there is no Black father figure in general. There's a severe lack of one. This is not something that the demonization of white people as the eternal enemy that can be pointed to as an easy sort of scapegoat for all of life's problems is not fixing the real issues. It's not going to fix the fact that there is a lack of fathers in the Black community. The fact that if you look up where every Planned Parenthood is in this country, they suspiciously coincide with predominantly Black communities.
I'll talk for an hour about that. That stuff makes me so mad.
Right, but it makes me angry too, because they're clearly, and I think that I truly hope and think that people of who are of Black racial background and Hispanic racial background or whatever are all starting to realize this too, that this white boogeyman thing is only designed to tear people apart. It is antithetical to diversity, and by diversity I do mean that everybody should be allowed to be themselves. We should celebrate our actual differences. It's astonishing because this used to be a left-wing talking point, and now it's somehow become a right-wing one of not like everybody segregate. The left wants to segregate people that you can't. First of all, everything about YTE is bad. Secondly, blame everything on him, and then secondly, everybody keep apart. Nobody integrate. Don't talk to your neighbor. Do not speak to him.
Yeah, the destroying the homogeneity and the trust in society. That is a major thing that the enemies of the West have done. And one of the things that they realized early on was, like we were talking about with the recognition heuristics, and you can't explain away the science of like calls to like, and people want to be around people that are like themselves. I think that is one of the primary, if not the primary, reasons behind the Immigration Act and this whole melting pot lie and the enforcement of mass migration, is they realized if they can quote unquote diversify, enrich all of these cities where the majority of the voting power is, then they can destroy the high trust security of society. They can remove law and order, and then they can get their way, and they can destroy and take control of whatever they want that way. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, that's definitely been a thing, and now we're noticing it immediately under the Biden administration with the highest number of people crossing the border than we've seen in 60 years or something like that. It's like the highest number on record in any recent sort of tally of people crossing the border because Biden said to do it. So just ignore all international law and national law and just come over here and we'll take care of you, essentially. Now, we know the reason the Democrats are doing it. It's because they want these people to live on their plantation. I find that so grossly offensive to people of all races that the Democrats think of you as slaves in your own right. Not slaves in a formal sense, but mental slaves. That's really sickening to me. And again, when I'm talking about diversity, it should be fine for people to want to interact or not want to. You should still have the right to say, I don't want to associate if you choose.
Right,
make up your mind.
The kind of quote unquote, white identitarian, whatever I am, is not of the Richard Spencer variety. I believe in the natural order of things, and we should lean into the natural order and embrace that in a healthy, holistic way. And in the natural order of things, you always have a small amount of quote unquote diversity of ethnic, religious, racial, linguistic interchange between groups. Like ethnicities form because a people, meaning a race, or a sub-race of people, are in a place long enough to develop their own unique traditions, languages, religions, etc., to become emergently different as an ethnicity. Those things naturally exchange a little bit with other ethnicities. But the integration lie, the melting pot lie, the Civinat lie of this is that will hold true at any volume, at any rate. And they have used that lie to package this mass migration crap, again, weaponizing our own values and our own knowledge against us. And that's why I think that it's, while in a vacuum, it's okay to say things like some amount of race mixing or ethnic mixing or religious mixing is tolerable, that is not a truism that holds at any level for any amount. Would you agree with that?
People are inherently, as I mentioned earlier, heuristically, drawn towards people who look like them. It's not even a racist thing. They'll say the implicit associations test is proof of racism. No, it's not. The implicit associations test is just proof of the faces that you find most familiar heuristically. That's not racism. I also don't.
Well, you know how the anti-whites are with that word racism. They say even being on time is racist.
Everything is racist. Everything is sexist, and you have to point it all out. Quote the great saint Anita Sarkeesian. But that is the issue of just. Like personally, it's not an issue for me. But I can understand why it is for other people. Some people, and by the way, it seemingly is only a political issue for white people to not want to engage with other cultures. But if Black people say, I don't want to engage with white people, or Hispanic people say, I don't want to engage with white people, that's seen as and by the way, Asian cultures do this to an extreme degree. For example,
yes,
Japanese,
they are. Apart from most types of Jews, I believe that the Chinese and the Japanese, and maybe the Koreans, are the highest ethnocentric group on Earth, apart from some sects of Muslim, I believe.
Right. Well,
because I know that for a fact, because I have a friend that's lived in China for a long time, and he says that they are the most ethnocentric people that he's ever experienced, traveled the whole world.
Not just that, but like, so I speak Japanese to a decent degree. I've spent a lot of time around Japanese people, and they will be overtly racist to your face. And as a Westerner, it's kind of like, what? Whoa, because we don't experience this kind of stuff, in the West. So one of my favorite Japanese phrases is "bata nioi," which means stinks like butter. And it's something it means they think Westerners smell like butter. And they'll just tell you that straight up, like, this person smells like butter.
That's great.
But I actually like it.
Smells like butter.
You smell butter. And it's but that's just the kind of like what about casual racism. The reality is that that's totally normal. Japanese people are not used to seeing Westerners. Like if you talk to Westerners who visited Japan, they'll like gawk at you. They don't have any compunctions about doing it.
This is why this is why I think that the term racist itself, racist and racism, the way that it's used, I think that those are inherently anti-white words because they were introduced into our linguistic set only a little over 100 years ago, weaponized by Bolshevists like Trotsky and his minions who wanted to find a way to sow seeds of division and weaponize Western values against the people of the West. So that's why I think that even the terms racist and racism are inherently anti-white terms, and I call them as such. So before we move on to the last thing, I want to remind chat and everyone listening, I will be getting to your questions and comments, and get them in now. We're almost done. So I'm putting the link to Entropy again in the chat. Over on the question widget, put any questions or comments you have for Aiden and myself about the things we talked about today or something new. Put them over there and we'll be getting to them. So with that being said, there's one last thing I wanted to ask you and talk to you about today. I think that your material, what you've done, your entire curriculum that you've built, is of great value to thinkers and educators who care about the well-being of Western kind, who care about the West, especially America. And there are people all throughout the country that I know and talk to who care about making homeschooling and community schooling better. I know a guy named Brant who is developing something called the School of the West, which is an online assisted curriculum to use anywhere in America or anywhere in the West, really, to teach people about the values that have been weaponized against us, the history that's been erased, and the nature of what schools want to lie about when it comes to the value of Western people. Would you mind if I put you in contact with them? Maybe they would want to learn from your videos or even include some of your beautiful erudite content in their curriculum. Would you mind?
I make a lot of adult jokes, but other than that...
I know that they would have to filter out some of your references and jokes because you're like me. You got a foul mouth and you like dirty jokes sometimes. I'm the same way.
I totally cleaned up my foul mouth, actually, to the fact where I censor myself in real life now, but...
okay. So, but
the foulness has really...
I do that some too now that I've gotten a little older. I try to sound a little more my age.
Right. I watched some videos I made 3 years ago and I'm like, F this, and I can't even do it. I'm like, F this and S that. And it's like, oh, I can't do that anymore. now it's very, very little cursing, but a lot of maybe adult
The
jokes.
reason I brought it up, Aiden, is I would love for the things that you have built, the things you've spent thousands of hours building. I think that there is a lot of really good intellectual and educational value in there. And this guy, Brant, I know, who's been on my channel, the guy behind the School of the West, he is a good guy to put you in touch with, because he will actually know the names of people and groups across America that might want to talk to you directly, and you can give them some good examples of what they might be looking for to pad out their curriculum to help socially fix our problems through educating people, the next wave of people, to be better and smarter and be immune to this ugly pathogen that's been put into us. So I'm glad that you're willing to talk.
Oh,
I'll give your email address and your Twitter to Brant, and I'll send you the website link to School of the West, and you can take a look at it. And with that being
I'm
said,
very devoted to pedagogy, and that's just not that's part of what inspired my YouTube channel, but it's everywhere, and it's why I'm trying to finish my PhD now. Is I don't care if I teach in a tiny school with 30 kids or if I teach on the internet. Pedagogy is like the most important thing you can do as a person, I think. So
it calls to me too. And when I first went to college forever ago in the 90s, the first thing I actually wanted to major in was education before I was a retard and swapped it to art. But
I was never
that's
interested
because I was already being influenced. I was already being influenced by the anti-whites who called themselves Marxists, the anti-whites who called themselves LGBT activists and stuff. Like a lot of young people, I was misled and lied to, and I've made decisions that were bad, and I've done degenerate bad things I wish I hadn't, and all that.
Well,
but
it's very appealing.
The point of all that is
they say you want to be one of us,
and the point of that is we need to raise people. We need to educate people to be hopefully as resistant to that kind of manipulation as possible, where I wasn't, and a lot of people of my generation and younger have not been raised in a way to have any defense against that whatsoever. And so I think that you could contribute greatly to building the psychological defenses that we need in the psychological war that our offspring are going to have going into the future. So I'll definitely be putting you in touch with them. And that last thing that I had to cover with you today. So in turn, is there anything you'd want to ask me, or any topics you want to talk about with me while we got you one-on-one here today?
Not particularly. The only thing is that I do want to admit that it's funny, when we were talking, I also have a weird, immediate, that I can't describe, sort of aversion to talking about white identity. It is so ingrained that even me, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I want to.
I could tell that about you a little bit, and that was one of the things that I wanted to have you on today, was to see how that would manifest. So thank you for talking about that. And I think that it's important for more people that are definitely not somebody quote unquote dangerous or toxic or whatever. We need to be unashamed to speak about our race, our ethnicities, and remember, an ethnicity is race plus other things. So like, our race is European. Our ethnicity is American. Just like if you're Japanese, your ethnicity is Japanese, your race is Asian, et cetera, et cetera. We need to be unashamed in talking about who we are, what we are, where we come from, because Western civilization has basically created the entire world that we know today, from fashion
to a major degree.
To the internet, to the way that we have logistics that can ship things around the world. Western people, whether you're Italian or Finnish or Scottish or whatever, Western people have basically created everything that we know as the modern world today. Of course, not 100%, but a very
Arabic people have
majority.
contributed a lot, although it was mostly during the Dark Ages, in which they were restoring Greek culture, and Asian people have provided a lot as well. But yes, you're correct. It is the majority of
and see, even the fact that you feel the need to say that is not just your beautiful autism. It's also the inherent white guilt and mean pathogens at play that I wanted to put on display here today. That we all have this weaponized white guilt in us culturally, and we have to actively work to dispel those evil lies, because it's not evil to love your people, to love your culture, to love your history, and we need to carry that forward and teach people that come after us that it's okay to do those things.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
I'm glad
100%.
that you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up. That was really good. So now, with that being said, let's move to what the community has to say and answer some questions and see what we got. I'm going to refresh Subscribestar, PayPal, and Cash App. We're going to see what donations we've got today. So we're going to go ahead and start by refreshing those. Okay, nothing new over on Subscribestar. I covered that on the previous community stream, so we're going to move away from that. And while PayPal refreshes, it's always slow, we're going to go over to Cash App. We had a 50 British pounds donation from our co-host Kizza earlier. He says, it's not much, but it's honest money. And of course, I always appreciate your support financially, Kizza. You've been a big ally to the channel for a long time. Over on PayPal, we don't have anything new on PayPal, but I'd like to remind everyone, the Alabastard, one of the primary financial supporters of the channel, she donated $250 US
Oh,
today. That's
wow.
the biggest single donation I've ever got, Aiden. So
Oh my
thank you.
gosh. Thank you.
She says, just got a stipend from my contract renegotiation and wanted to share excess. Love your content and your activism. Keep up the good work for white well-being. Signed, the Alabastard. She is a wonderful woman. She and her husband, California. She's been a friend of mine and a financial supporter of the channel for a long time. Great lady. So now let's move to Trovo and D-Live, see what we got over there. Howdy to Morty on Trovo again. Over on D-Live, thank you for the lemons, everybody. Hello to Zana. I don't recognize your name, so thank you for showing up on D-Live today, and the usual crew over on D-Live. Howdy, fellas. All right, now, moving to Entropy, we have some things. First, I'm going to address something. Ruination Media is a white positive content creator that I know. He's been in the chat saying a lot of things. But one of the things that he said that I wanted to talk to you about was, I'm going to quote directly from him, another question for Aiden. Why are the authorities anti-white when the majority of America is white and most of these anti-whites are white? Now, I know from watching your videos some particulars you might say, but the ball is in your court. Please answer the question.
Oh, because they want to put them on the plantation. They want to maintain their power. It doesn't matter what their race is, but the Democrats in particular, who are the ones who currently utilize this race baiting crap, they want to maintain their power, but they want to keep, as I mentioned earlier, they basically want to keep a subclass of people who are kept stupid and uneducated and poor, and they will say that they want to do this, which is the most ridiculous stuff, because they'll say it's predestination. It's that if you are black, if you are Hispanic, you are destined to be poor and uneducated. And then, weirdly, the black community and the Hispanic community sometimes will enforce these rules upon themselves. They'll be like, what are you doing going to college? What are you doing?
Yep.
You're trying to be white. What the hell is this? I mean, they absolutely will enforce these societal rules upon themselves. And the result is you get, particularly in the black community, a community that is extremely built around supporting Democrats who hate them, but find their votes useful.
Instead of hate, I say weaponize.
Yeah,
They want to weaponize them as a subclass to get to maintain power, specifically to harm Western civilization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because
I always like to put this. I like to put this in the lens of what things do. That's the whole reason that when you hear me speak, I'll say the anti-whites who call themselves feminists, or the anti-Western faction known as the ADL, for example. I like to call things by terms of my choosing and call them by what they do. That's why when I talk about feminists, you call them anti-white and anti-male. Don't call them by the names of their choosing. Call them by what they do, because then there's no question. And then if they choose to argue it, you're putting them on the back foot, having to defend, oh, no, I'm not anti-male, I'm not anti-white. Right. And then you can grill them on it and you win. So that's why you hear me say kind of thing a lot.
Right. So
I look at everything.
To reframe what I said then, these are people who think that they should all get to be the dog killers and the communist dictatorship they want to put in place, and think they can get a bunch of black and brown people to vote their communist revolution into power, or at least fight and die for it while they're living in their comfy mansions. How about that?
Exactly. Right. The disposable dogs of the KNVD or whatever. So with that being said, we're going to move on to something else over on Entropy. Over on Entropy, we have a question by Arakeen Green Moon. Arakeen says, question for Aiden. Given you're a paladin, under which god do you serve?
Oh, shoot. Who's the god of like revelry and booze? It starts with a K,
Dionysus?
No. It's a Pathfinder god.
I'm not up to speed on Pathfinder deities. Sorry. I know Serenray, the goddess of light and flame. I know that one.
Caden Colleen. Caden Colleen.
Caden Colleen. Okay, cool. Next question over on Entropy is Penrir Ijanar, or Ihajar. I'm sure I slaughtered that name. I'm so sorry. This person says, Aiden, will you please say Ara? That's ARA space ARA.
Yeah, Ara, but I'm just an old lady.
That must be an anime reference. I don't get, because I'm not a degenerate anymore. All right. I hope that was worth the price of admission, friend. Viraldo Ansadini says, could Aiden make simpler and shorter versions of various topics? No offense to her, but I usually fall asleep during videos that long, and that also makes her content prohibitive for normies and people with low attention span.
So here's the conundrum, right? Is that if I do shorter videos, I will inevitably leave stuff out. I will need to, by necessity, leave stuff out. And so the argument is cohesiveness and comprehensiveness versus quickness or shortness, but I prefer something to be succinct. So if I wanted to be really comprehensive, the videos wouldn't be an hour long. They'd be 5 hours long, right? If I want to be truly comprehensive. So I try to go for a middle ground of succinctness where I cover everything. And I rarely get criticized anymore because they're at like this perfect length where leftists who want to dunk on me can't find the time to go through. Because even if they watch my videos, they didn't have to go and read the study just to find that it was the correct site, that I just, what I cited was correct. So it wouldn't work out for them well.
I know what you mean, because I have an analysis series, which they're not long and good like your videos, but it's called Deep Double Analysis. Again, showing my adult humor in the channel description. In my Deep Double Analysis series, whenever I look at a topic, I get enough material to make like a 3-hour diatribe about it. And I'm like, I can't do this. Nobody will listen to this. I have to cut it down. And even my cut down versions are sometimes 30 and 40 minutes long. So I know that's what you're talking about.
You cannot be concise and totally accurate at the same time. You kind of have to find a middle ground between being concise and being accurate, because the reality is that what I basically write is a literature review for every video. It's a literature review plus some of my ideas of where I think things are going. And that's generally very, very small amount of it. But if I did any less, I feel like it would open me up for people, not just that it would make my videos more accessible, because I would like them to be more accessible. It's more that if I missed something, someone will come at me and be like, oh yeah, well, not just someone, but a bunch of people will come at me and be like, oh yeah, well, what about this? And do a response video where they just harp on the fact that I missed some study. It's why I almost always, like 90% of the time, I would say, provide research that is contradictory to whatever my hypothesis is. Because, by the way, there always is.
Yeah, I've noticed you're good about that. You're really good about that, yeah.
Well, there always... and I like... That does exist in almost any
study.
And I like
that when you present things, I like how when you present things, you say... like even in one of the 2 videos I watched, I think it was the first one today I watched all of, you said, even in this subset, when you were talking about the algorithms, the algorithmic research that looked into the radicalization of people on YouTube, even you said, now keep in mind, even the people that did this study, they realized there was like a 27% margin of error within what their algorithm could even accurately detect and label. So you're really good about speaking on, now this data has this problem, or here's contradictory data, so take it for what it is. Like, you're really good about that, and I really appreciate that in your content.
Well, thank you. We're trained to do that in doc school, and it's actually the last thing I think, if I would point out anything on this real quick, is that when you see people who like cite data and don't do stuff like that ever, they're scientism worshippers. They're not scientists. I'm not calling myself a scientist either.
Exactly.
These are people who just worship the concept of science. They're the I fucking love science people. They don't really care about what the data actually mean, what the methodology was. They just want to truncate some. That's why I don't make short videos, because I don't want to truncate the data down.
They don't care what the data means. They care to find data that support what they believe already.
No, and yeah, I mean, yes, they do, and that's not what I want to do. I want you as the audience member to understand what's going on from a comprehensive perspective. Maybe not the most comprehensive, because it's not 5 hours long, but from a succinct level of data to understand what's happening, basically based on a lot of data sets. So like, even if one study has got some issues, and oftentimes if it does have one, I try to point it out if it's overtly obvious. And that's why I don't just like, that's the other thing, I don't read the abstracts. So I think a lot of people who go into like making quote unquote science videos, and I don't want to like call anyone out in particular, but I could be like philosophy tube. But there are people who kind of like sort of sometimes cite research, and I think ContraPoints has done some sort of stuff like this, but I think philosophy tube YouTube and Contra both very specifically use old stuff that's like just theoretical and philosophical rather than data driven for a reason. Because otherwise,
yeah, and also like you said, go ahead. Sorry.
Just otherwise you'd have to deal with the fact of actually understanding statistics and understanding methodologies, and that's a pain. I guess I don't know.
Well, we have some late financial gifts here at the end. We have Slots. Slots is a staunch member of White Wellbeing, and he helps a lot with documenting anti-white articles and calling out anti-whiteism over on Twitter. I've seen him do it on other places too. Thank you for the $5. I appreciate that, Slots. He sent that on Cash App with no message. Thank you very much. And we don't have anything on PayPal or Subscribestar, so I'm going to close those down since we're at the end of the stream. And the last financial donation we have today is a little bit degenerate, but it's funny, so I'm going to read it. Architect of Fate, for $5 over on Entropy, says the following. Aiden, because Yizz is not a degenerate, and you are familiar with Mr. Ricata, will you answer the Futa question? You answer the Futa question?
Traps aren't gay.
Or no balls?
Oh, balls or no balls? Well, first of all, traps aren't
balls
gay.
or no balls.
I was just anticipating that question. Look, Layman and I had a long discussion about this many years ago. But traps aren't gay and balls.
Well, let's
or
not
no
have
balls.
a long discussion about anime degeneracy on my channel.
I know it's all good. So balls or no balls? I'd say no balls personally.
Okay.
I don't know what Ricata's answer was, by the way.
You got your answer. You got your answer, and we're not going to talk about degeneracy anymore. So thank you for the $5. I appreciate that. All right. That is all over on Entropy, so we have come to the end of the community discussion. And for those of you who asked questions or said things in the YouTube chat that I didn't address, let this be a lesson to you. Use Entropy and put your ideas and questions in the question widget, and I will read them. So now you have learned. So with that being said to everyone, thank you all for coming by to listen to my conversation with Aiden today. Thank you for being part of, hopefully, a better improvement to the way that we think and speak about all of these important issues for our civilization and for our people. And thank you the most to Aiden Paladin for being here today to be with us. Aiden, is there anything you'd like to say today on the way out? I already have your Twitter and your channel in the description of the video, and people will know where to find you there. I'm going to put the links in the chat for people. Is there anything specific that you're working on or anything that you want to shill or talk about today before we get out of here?
But yeah, real quickly, the next video will be on woke washing, which is a really cool term I had never heard until venturing into this area of research, which is when a company...
I have also not heard of that term before.
Which is when a company sells advertisements off of the idea of being woke. It's like greenwashing. But I have a bunch of data on it that are quite interesting on whether, does this make money and how does it affect attitudes towards a brand? The answers actually might surprise you a little bit. I should just say that's a hype of the video. Right. It's interesting.
Sounds good. Well, I just finished putting your links to your Twitter and to your handle over in Entropy and Entropy, YouTube, and DLive. And oops, looks like I did one of the links wrong over in DLive. You'll just have to deal with it. I did it wrong, but anyway, it's water under the bridge. So thank you so much for being here again today.
Thanks for having me.
Please follow Aiden. Oh, you're welcome very much. And we are going to be speaking off air because she wants me to meet her fiance.
Oh yeah, really
and they are going to be on. They are going to be special guests on Discordant Dragons this Monday. So you can meet her and her fiance Monday night. So thank you guys for being here today. Thank you, Aiden, for helping me move a very important conversation with hopefully the right moral framework forward and contributing your beautiful scientific autism to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tolerating me being late and gay. So...
You're welcome. All right. Well, with that being said, I hope all of you have a wonderful, blessed weekend, and we will see you Monday night for Dragons of Discord.